You are listening to the Landon and Jeff Show, exclusively on DolphinsTalk.com. And now, here are your hosts, Landon and Jeff.
Welcome to the Landon and Jeff Show. I'm Landon.
I'm Landon's dad, Jeff. And Landon, we are moving to the end of the regular season, and honestly, the end can't get here quick enough for me.
Yeah, except I do think it's going to be a very entertaining playoff to watch. But yeah, this regular season has not been favorable for Dolphins fans. Not much is not much good has came other than that one Jason Sanders touchdown play, Devontae Parker being really good, and Brian Flores being a good coach.
Yeah, so let's start with Devontae. Signed his new contract, played well again last week. Didn't get the Pro Bowl nod, but if you look at the numbers, Landon, he wasn't a Pro Bowler. I think that's a great indictment on the team that literally nobody, Walt Aikens was probably as close for special teams to a Pro Bowler as we would have gotten. That says something when you can't get anyone on the roster. One of only two teams not to get someone, ironically, the Giants, who thrashed us last week, were the other team not to get a Pro Bowler.
You know what? I think that's just something else we could use as motivation on Sunday against the Bengals, because the Bengals somehow had someone on the Geno Atkins make it to play Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Geno Atkins, though, played pretty well. I just kind of want this season over just because I'm really excited about the offseason. And I really, the difference between that number 2 and number 3 pick could be staggering. And really, that's going to play out over the next 2 weeks. And that's kind of what we're sort of watching at this point to kind of see what's happening, because there really isn't much else to look for.
Yeah, the only thing I'm looking for is us to lose out, because winning doesn't do anything for me at this point in time. I just want to have the best draft pick possible so we can hopefully get a future star.
Yeah, see, that's where we disagree. I still always want to win. I think we will beat Cincinnati. Then I think we will lose to the Patriots. That being said, it's how do you know going forward? I mean, last week was a really bad look. They couldn't block anybody. The offensive line is really, really bad. And when you couple that with the defensive line getting no pressure, all the injuries in the secondary, it's not a recipe for success. But I'll tell you, Landon, I've been reading a lot about potential ways to retool and rebuild, and there are ways they can do it quickly. What's interesting is I read Armando Salguero's article on Stephen Ross the other day that he had on Sunday morning before they played the Giants, and talked about the Hudson Yards project and whatever. And really, it sounds to me that Ross is going to remain patient if he kind of stays true to what he says in the article. But there's so many holes on this team, pal. They need a running back. They need multiple offensive linemen. They need multiple defensive linemen. They need some help in the secondary. They need a quarterback. Just so many things they need. It's even with all these draft picks in 1 year, it's going to be hard to do it all, right?
Yeah, it's going to be tough in the draft to build up a team, which is the ideal way to do it. However, I could see the Dolphins making some moves in free agency, not handing out like the big contracts, but going for someone who has a lot of high potential, because I feel like that's just the way Brian Flores has been running this season. So I feel like we're going to do something like that in the off season. But I really can't see us being a playoff team next year, potentially the year after, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's just so tough. I hope that they continue to move in the right direction. But yeah, it's going to be tough, Landon, because Buffalo showed itself to be pretty good. There's plenty of good teams in the AFC, and especially some of the younger teams that are out there. They're not going to get worse. But free agency has proven over the years to be such a crapshoot. There's a reason that players are allowed to enter free agency. It's because their incumbent team doesn't want them anymore a lot of times, in addition to those who just kind of price themselves out. So you really have to be selective with who you pick up. I do love what Chris Greer has done and Brian Flores, just trying anybody. I mean, it seems like every week we're picking up 4 or 5 guys off the waiver wire or other teams' practice squads to see what's there. But one thing I really want to dive in with Landon, is the running back position. It's a disaster. And, I really just don't understand how they're going to fix it. But do you want them to take say a running back like Taylor from Wisconsin, who is probably the best back, or one of these? Do you want to see them take a back in the first round, or do you want to see them try to do what they've done in the past and get someone a little bit later?
Let's be honest. We need a running back. Now, what the price of that at this point in time doesn't bother me. You need someone who's going to be a running back, and they're going to be a running back for the future. Because if we use a first round pick and we have a stud running back, we're set. That's a skill position. That's something you need that can be justified. However, if we're using like a fourth or fifth round pick on someone who's a running back you don't really know, and he's out of the league in a couple of years, that's what you can't do. So I'd rather use a high round pick on a very low blessed potential running back who could be a future star in the NFL than try and like do what we've been doing and just trying to find someone out of nothing, because we're just not good at that.
Yeah, my thing, Landon, that makes it tough for me is you see these other teams that just find these running backs late, and you're like, oh, we could do that too. But that's just not always, like you said, the easy. I think if we had a good running back, like a really good running back, that would take so much pressure. Suddenly the offensive line is better because the running back is making the running game something they actually need to do. Suddenly a lot of things just get better. The quarterback gets better because now he has a running game behind him. I mean, right now, Ryan Fitzpatrick's our leading rusher, which is horrifying. I will say this, the guy that I kind of like, Landon, and I think he could potentially be there in the second round, is Chuba Hubbard, the running back from Oklahoma State. He was the nation's leading rusher, so he's certainly not sneaking up on anybody. I am glad he's going to play in the Texas Bowl, so I can see him one more time. But this guy is 6'1", over 200 pounds, is just, a complete stud for Oklahoma State. I get it. It's the Big 12. They don't play any defense there. So that's where I want to see him, potentially in bowl games and all-star games and stuff. But, he just seems like he would be someone really good and potentially someone who could be there in the second round, which would be my preference. My preference isn't to take one in the first round just because I don't think you ever seem to get stud offensive tackles or pass rushers in the second round, or much rarer, and certainly quarterbacks. So I do think we need to do those positions earlier and kind of make sure we nail those positions and this running back. So keep an eye on Hubbard, the running back from Oklahoma State, as you watch these bowl games.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I haven't done much looking into this running back class. I've seen a lot of receivers, offensive linemen, and like defensive players. But I haven't really paid attention to running backs because very few of them go in the high draft picks, and most of them either go low draft picks, 5th, 6th round, potentially 4th if you're pretty good. But it's really hard to tell with running backs because, as you said, there's not much defense played in college football, especially when you're on the non-top team.
Yeah, and the other thing, Landon, is you got to look at the history of the Patriots for anything that the Dolphins are doing right, because that's kind of where these guys cut their teeth, and that's where they learned kind of how to do it. If you look at what the Patriots did, other than Sony Michel, they very rarely took the high draft pick running back. The other thing that's interesting, Landon, is they very rarely took the one-dimensional runner like the Derrick Henrys, or guys who were just pure runners of the ball. They would take a lot of guys who could catch the ball in addition to running the ball. So keep that in mind as you look for prospects. It's probably, if you asked and got the honest answer from Greer and Flores, if you look at the Patriot model, you don't want one running back who's sort of your guy. You want a committee of 2 or 3 that you can interchangeably use, like the Patriots do with James White and Sony Michel and Rex Burkhardt. So I think that's more the model. And to me, that model doesn't necessarily scream first round pick. So as much as I like Taylor and I think he's really good, I'd be much happier if our first round went quarterback, wide receiver, offensive lineman, or quarterback, offensive lineman, defensive lineman. And then somewhere in that second round, we could pick up a guy like Hubbard.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the most ideal fit for Brian Flores at the running back is someone that the quarterback can motion out and have as a slot receiver. Because then that brings so many more options to the table. The quarterback feels comfortable audibling if they don't have the right personnel on. And it just makes everything easier. And then also that one more threat that teams have to worry about. And if you don't have a good cover/run linebacker, you could get toasted.
Yeah, I think you're right. So that's kind of our thoughts about running back. When we get in the offseason, Landon, we'll go through position by position like we did last year. Last week, of course, we had Jason Sanders on the show. It was super fun having him and talking to him. But what we didn't do is we didn't really talk about the game in the week ahead. So let's not make that mistake again. Let's talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals game. This is, I know you're rooting for us to lose because you want the better draft pick. I'm rooting for us to win because I hate losing. But at the end of the day,
That's fair.
At the end of the day, Andy Dalton is probably going to be starting one of the last games he will ever start for the Cincinnati Bengals. They are sitting in a perfect position to get Joe Burrow, who I think everybody agrees is going to be the top pick.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for in this game? What are you thinking that is going to be out there?
So someone who I mentioned I like a decent amount is Patrick Laird, the running back. So I just like to see something from him. If I don't see anything else but that, I feel like I'll be very content with this game because it's gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be very hard to judge because neither team is trying to win per se, for at least as far as I know. So I feel like it's gonna be a little hard to judge how our offensive line or defensive line does. But if Patrick Laird shows like some sort of flashes and proves that he could be on the team in a couple of years, I feel like that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think him and Gaskin have the next 2 weeks to really show these coaches what they can do, which is exciting. But I want to get to the Cincinnati game. What are you looking for? Who are people that you want to see kind of step up, or what are questions you want to have answered by our team this week, or is this just one of those cases where you don't really care and you just kind of are kind of waiting for it to get over? I mean, it's a pretty, Miami's actually a 1-point favorite against a 1-13 team. It's just, this could potentially be an awful football game.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this could be a very sloppy game, and there's going to be a lot of turnovers. So, I mean, I guess you could call it good defense, but yeah, I'd like to see our linebackers play well, just because linebackers have been an issue for a while, and I feel like that's still almost a question because I'm not sure. Raekwon McMillan had a pretty good season, but he was in Pro Bowl contention, but that was only for his tackles because he had an insane amount of tackles because teams could run up the middle easily. But I'd like to see our linebackers and Christian Wilkins play well, even though he has been very good this season.
Yeah, I was just looking on ESPN.com, Landon, at the Bengals have an 81.2% chance to earn the number 1 pick and a 99.9% of having a top 5 pick. Conversely, Miami has a 6.8% chance to earn the number 1 pick and a 98.6% chance of a top 5 pick. What's also interesting, Landon, is this week the Redskins and the Giants play. So of these 3-11 teams, you're going to have one of them that's going to be 4-11. You're going to have one of them that's going to be 3-12, and then you have the Dolphins and the Bengals. So it's really a pretty pathetic mix of sort of how a football game is going to be played. The things that I want to see, Landon, are I would love to see a little more out of the defensive line, and just what type of player are we going to have if any of these guys are keepers besides Taco Charlton. Charles Harris, Landon, was inactive last week. I would assume he'll continue his inactivity, and I would assume that he will be leaving the team after the year. That's just such a brutal bust, because if you look, and it's been well documented, I mean, TJ Watt went 10 picks after him. There's so many good pass rushers who went after him. It's been pretty brutal.
Yeah, but I'd rather us just give up on trying and let some other team experiment with him, because I really don't think our coaching staff is going to be able to get anything out of him, because I don't think there's much to get out.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was pretty brutal. All right, Landon, what else do you want to try to cover before we get to our picks and kind of wrap up this week on the Landon and Jeff Show?
There's not much I'd like to talk about other than what you mentioned was it's gonna be a tank bowl full weekend, which
Yeah,
I always enjoy
it's
watching.
yeah, I'm going to be home watching football, so I will do that. Again, we talked about no um, Pro Bowler, the league's worst pass rushing team, the league's, worst running team. There's just a lot of stats that are not going in our favor. I would like to see, like you said, Wilkins play well for the last 2 weeks. That would be something that would be really, really great to see. All right, Landon, you want to give me an update on our picks and how we're looking here?
Yeah, so somehow I have flipped. I had a huge lead on you, and now I am 10, 11, and 3, and you are 13 and 11.
Well, it's because I'm making better picks now, Landon. That's pretty easy.
Whatever you say.
All right, whose week is it to go first?
If I remember correctly, it is your week to go first because I went first because it was the Jason Sanders one last week, and we just kind of rushed him a little bit.
Okay. So I will make my 3 picks. My first pick is I'm going to take the Colts -7 over the Panthers. I'm going to take
Okay.
the Steelers -3 against Adam Gase and the awful, awful, awful Jets. And I'm going to take the Falcons -7 against the Jaguars, who just fired Tom Coughlin today.
Yeah, they did, and it's gonna be interesting seeing people's reactions because obviously they're the hometown team, and I feel like a lot of people liked him. However, he hasn't been the best in previous weeks. So that
Agreed.
being said, actually, I'm not gonna choose that game. I'm gonna go with the Ravens over the Browns
Okay.
because the Browns are just a mess again. I feel like that's just a repeated headline.
Okay.
Do you know what the line is?
On the Ravens and the Browns,
8.5 is my guess.
what'd you say, bud?
I said 8.5 is my guess.
10-point favorites for the Ravens.
Wow. Okay, next I'm gonna go with the Colts over the Panthers.
Okay. The Colts, as I already said, are 7-point favorites, so we have that game the same.
Oh wait, you picked that too? Oh my bad, I won't
I
pick
did.
it then.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I didn't. I'll pick Seattle over the Cardinals.
Okay.
But
Seattle.
they're still
Yeah, that's a good one to pick. I looked at that. Seattle 9.5.
they're one of the few teams that have something to play for other than pride
Yeah,
because
that's true.
they're still fighting with the 49ers, who are the other team I'm gonna pick. The 49ers over the Rams.
All right. The 49ers, I looked at that game too, because I think the 49ers are going to kill them, and it's only 6.5 points, and I think it should be much bigger than that.
Yeah. But that's part of the thing of us doing it on Wednesdays.
Yep. All right, Landon, anything else you'd like to say on this show before we bring it home?
No, I think we did a pretty good job.
All right. Well, you normally say we do a pretty good job, so I like believing you. All right, Landon, bring it home.
Okay, that's been the Landon and Jeff Show. I'm Landon.
And I'm Landon's dad, Jeff. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you or talk to you next week on the Landon and Jeff Show.